Welcome everybody to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim or UFO Man. Below me are my two fantastic panelists, Polly Rotterman, who is an investigative journalist and all-around UFO researcher experiencer, and down below her is my fantastic friend and fiance, my flock, Sarah, who is also a UFO experiencer and a UFO researcher. Tonight we have a gentleman coming all the way from Barbados, the island of Barbados. His name is JEHAN Sattaur. He has a podcast called Boundless Authenticity. What's it? Boundless Authenticity Bean?
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Okay. And he also has a Facebook page. So please check up on his Facebook page, join his group, subscribe to his channel, give him a like on all his videos, and please welcome JEHAN.
Welcome.
Howdy.
Hey.
Oh, that's our little friend there.
Got here just in time.
Oh,
yeah. We do have a pigeon on set.
Yes.
And what is the pigeon's name?
Birdie.
Birdie?
Yep.
Hi, Birdie.
That's what happens when you let your name get fed.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to tell everyone, hello everyone. I've known JEHAN for, I guess, some years now, right? I don't even remember how we met. But since then, this has been a beautiful friendship, and it was really important for us to make this show with you. We truly believe your podcast is beautiful. You are very sincere and honest, and the interviews are just beautiful. So we wanted to share your story because you've had also alien experiences, kind of with your dreams. So maybe let's just start with your childhood. Where were you born? And how did this start?
Well, I was born in Barbados, and I just kind of wasn't exposed culturally to the concept of UFOs and aliens and all those different things. So up until the point that I had any dreams and experiences, whatever you would like to call them, I had no information to fill my mind with the concept whatsoever. And so that was what was so strange about it for me. So it really started somewhere around early age 4. And I just started having these dreams about being taken into this craft. And I would just be sleeping. And I remember the way my bed was facing, there was a window to my left side. And I would look through that window. And I never sucked my thumb, but I'd suck the 2 middle fingers, and I would just looking, because this would be resting on my nose, and I remember just always be looking out the window. And the very first time it happened, I can remember just seeing the finger on my nose as I drift off to sleep, and then instantly I went into probably the deepest awareness of being asleep at the same time, but also having this experience of watching the dream happen in real time. And it is just really strange to describe, because I could see the veranda to my house. Back in those days, you had these old terrazzo tiles that were black and white, and we had wrought iron railings and stuff. And I remember going out onto those things and being curious. And as soon as I get to that point, then this really bright white light would come right down from the top of the frame, I guess, in my conscious vision, and you would see it come down, and I would go up instantly. And it would just happen really fast. There was no nervousness. There was no fear. It was very peaceful and very calm. And I would always have this presence right over my left shoulder, coincidentally where he is. And it would just be this reassuring feeling. And I would see the earth through a kind of an opening. Normally I've said it's a window, but it was more like a hatch of some kind. You could see the earth. And I jokingly say that's why I don't think the earth is flat. But I just don't know what that really was about. And the more I've tried to dig at it and figure out what that was about, the less it makes any sense. And the less information I actually have about it. It just is what it is. And it went away in my late teenage years because I was busy trying to be a rock star and drinking and drugging and stuff like that. And I stopped having mystical experiences altogether. And then after about age 23, somewhere between 24 or 25, they started to happen over again. And I was like, okay, why is this dream back?
Right.
Yeah, I have no answers. I still have no answers.
So were the dreams the same?
Exactly the same every single time. No
Do you remember something about that presence on your left shoulder? Did you see like a body or something? Was it just like a feeling that something was there? Did you get any kind of message?
It was always a feeling. It was never an actual body. And I could tell that it was someone standing behind me. And you guess you know how these things operate. So it was more felt internally than it was a physical presence, like an actual hand on my shoulder. But yet I was perceiving it as that. And we know how these ETs operate. They don't have to touch you.
Right.
Right.
So why that stood out to me, I've never talked about this before, but you guys remember Unsolved Mysteries? There was one episode early in the series where they were talking about UFOs. And I remember watching that with my parents around age 6 or 7 and having a full body experience where I actually was so taken over by the energy of it that I started to feel a little bit sick. I was like, well, I don't know what is happening. And so there was so much resonance with that I was like, wow, I don't know why I feel this way about seeing that for the first time, right? That was my first exposure to aliens. And then I got really curious about aliens. And then I got E.T. on VHS. And that was like life-changing. And I remember bawling every single time it would get to the part where E.T.'s in the containment area. And he's hooked up to all these machines and stuff, like just bawling uncontrollably. And my parents would be like, what is wrong with you? And
Well, did you talk with your parents about it? Like, well, 4 years old, you were very, like, I don't know if we can even talk about these experiences at that age. But were you
Innocent.
able maybe to talk with your parents about it? Maybe, when we talk about generational things in this phenomenon, have you heard from your parents or a member of your family having these same experiences? No, huh?
my parents are chronic deniers of anything paranormal and supernatural. Anytime my mother has a paranormal experience, she refers to it as a spook. And she's got these real antiquated, like scary movie type ideas about stuff. And I would see stuff all the time when I was a young kid. I tell a story about a man in a clock. We used to have this big rectangular painting of a clock, and it was ships out to sea at sunset. And in the top right hand corner, there was the clock part. And I would stare at that and I'd laugh and I'd see a man's face and he was wearing a hat and stuff. And he would just like talk to me and I'd be babbling in baby language and stuff at it. Because I don't know. I was probably about 3 when I first started seeing that because I was still in my walker. I remember I used to get in this thing and run up and down the house, but I would stop momentarily and look at the clock and laugh. And one day my mother finally asked me, what were you laughing at? And I was like, you don't see the man in the clock? And she was like, no. And then it was kind of just like, shh, don't tell your father because he'll freak out, kind of thing, you know? So
Yeah.
I understand why I was crying about ET, but there was just that resonance. And, you know, you don't have that language yet for why you feel this way about what's happening to ET, right?
Right. A lot of people who have paranormal experiences, whether it be at a very young age or at an advanced age, usually have ET contact.
Well, personally, from a psychological perspective, you know, that's what I'm into. And I don't think that either of the phenomenon are separate or distinct. It's all just like the same way we have light and dark in every aspect. There's light and dark.
Right.
And so typically what we would call parasitic entities are the lower spectrum, in my opinion, of what's going on with the ETs.
Right. Exactly.
We can go in so many directions and down deep on so many levels where that's concerned. But I think that I've had a blessed life where I can safely say that the stuff that happened was real because of no exposure to TV. And I've always kind of been anti watching a lot of TV and stuff anyways. I've always been more creative. First time I got a musical instrument, that was it. You didn't see me for years after that. I disappeared in my room. And so I wasn't doing those things. And I've had plenty of experiences that were unexplainable. So later on in life, when I quote unquote woke up,
How?
I hate
So
that.
that's my next question. What was that breaking point that took you from, you know, this is just an experience, this is just a dream, and you did that step where you said, okay, something's going on. I need to check and research, you know? I think there's a turning point there for you. So what happened? When did
Long
you take
story
this like
short.
seriously?
Long story short, I've had so many paranormal experiences in between that. But if I fast forward it to about 20, let's say 2008, I really started being so unhappy with the way life was going that all I ever really wanted to do was sedate myself. So I think by the time I was around age 23, where I got tired of the music industry and the way things were, my lawyer at the time, he didn't want me to sign a particular contract, and he turned his laptop around in his office and said, watch this video. And it was from a channel from a guy called Farhan Khan, and he had this video about the music industry, and he was showing off all these Illuminati symbols and stuff like that. And that was the very first time I actually went, wow, so this world really is just fake and evil as fuck. And then when I had that realization, I think I just went all the way in the wrong direction. So I eventually tried to commit suicide like 3 different times. And on the 3rd time, I always tell this story the exact same way. I heard myself say, Jesus Christ, I can't even kill myself right. And when I heard those words come out of my mouth just automatically like that, I was like, that is the best marker of where I'm actually at mentally. Like, I got excited about this. And there was a shift that followed that. But I spent almost 2 weeks in bed after that experience because it was such a consciousness changing experience. It wasn't the stereotypical near-death experience where somebody's like, it's the voice of God, and you know, they said you have to go back, all that kind of thing like that. It wasn't. There was no words. There were these 2 beings, one on either side, and I could tell that they were just observing at first, and it was very shimmering, a presence, an outline. So it wasn't, again, anything I could concretely say it was humanoid or otherwise.
Right.
And I felt as though something was being communicated to me that wasn't in words, but I still understood. When I came back from that experience, I slept, like I said, for almost 2 weeks. And I was thinking over and over, I don't know what that was. I don't know what to do. All these different things. I was pretty much depressed and everybody was worried. I had lots of friends and stuff were coming and they were trying to talk to me and ask me what was going on. And I didn't have the language to communicate to them what was happening. They would all call me crazy anyway if I had said what I'd seen, so I kept my mouth shut. But after that, I was a completely different person, and I just did everything that I could to try to understand the phenomenon of consciousness. And it was almost like when that happened, then books would show up, people would show up in my path, and I traveled from here to the United States to then play music as a guitar player and to be a songwriter and all these different things in the industry. And I don't know where that opportunity came from out the clear blue either. But all of a sudden you put this kid that's never had success that big before in a room with a bunch of people that, you only hear about them on the radio and stuff, and you're like shitting your pants and you're like, oh my God, what do I do? And I ended up chasing that, being a part of that world. Didn't like it, didn't feel authentic, kept hitting against the same barriers. And I realized that, you know what? The very same thing that kind of pissed me off a little bit, that I realized that everything was fake and made up and like this world is not what you think it is what kept me going. And I investigated what was happening. And then you fast forward a little bit more time after that to what I think was another intervention. And I normally refer to it as my angel moment, but imagine this. You're me. You're in the middle of Allentown, Pennsylvania, setting up to do a gig. And you're just bossing everybody around on the Birdie's having a field day here. He despises the computer mouse and he just tries to pick it up and throw it away. Anyways, you're in the middle of this place and you're setting up, you're bossing around the sound engineer and stuff. And this tall guy, really white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, taps you on the shoulder. And he says, hey, notice you have an incredible affinity for leadership. Have you ever heard of coaching? And I was just like, all right, hold on one second. And he was so tall, I was like, and that's not saying a lot because I'm a short guy, but it was still like literally like that. And I was like, hold on. And I'm telling the sound guy what I got to tell him. And I turn around immediately, like a minute later, to tell the guy, yeah, so what were you saying? And he was gone. And so I searched the whole bar for this guy. He was gone. I was like, why the fuck would you tell somebody something like that and then just leave? Like, at first I was like, what an impatient bastard. And all this stuff was going through my head, right? But,
Right.
That I immediately ran right home because by that time I figured out that nothing was a coincidence. And I started Googling, what is this coaching thing all about? And so you see personal trainers and you see like Tony Robbins and you're like, oh, that guy. So I asked my roommate at the time, have you ever heard of coaching? And he was like, absolutely. And he pulls out this drawer and there's all these certificates and stuff. So that's how I get exposed to that world. And I remember my initial calling for psychology. I was studying psychology at university, but I quit university to pursue music. And I always knew music was going to be something that would change my life for one reason or another. And so that was just it for me. I ended up getting really deep into spirituality and what is consciousness. And I isolated from all of my friends and family for a long time, a little over a year. And I spent a lot of time in my room just meditating. Where do you leave the computer mouse, bro? Just meditating and having these out-of-body experiences and seeing different beings. And one time I was meditating and I'm pretty sure that I saw an alien, gray alien looking type, humanoid type thing come through the window and just watch me meditate. And so around that time, I had another experience because I was working at this time too, and I remember I had to go to work the next day, and I felt god awful, like sick to my stomach. But the night before I was sleeping, I was on my right side, and there's a window behind me to the left, and a big bright white light came out of there, and it was like searching the entire room. And when it got to me and I saw it and I turned to look at it, as soon as I turned halfway and caught a glimpse of it, I went right into a trance. And that caught my attention too, because I felt like crap the next day. And I really couldn't tell you what happened then, but I don't appear to have any implants or any other kind of change to me. But I knew that something had happened. And then shortly after that, I started having these dreams of ET crafts in the sky. And the interesting thing about the ET crafts in the sky is that they were like spirals. So kind of like eerily similar to Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Right? Spiral. And there's people trying to say that that's a depiction of ET crafts in the sky as well, and it's not like stars or anything like that, right? I've heard that theory. And it makes sense to me because they were trying to show me something, because I always had a series of dreams following that where they would show me different things about people in my environment that weren't good. And it would always begin with them basically showing up, being above, and you would see like military jets and stuff would come around and try to get him, and they would just zigzag and dodge and stuff like that. And then they would get closer to me, and there would be this feeling of I don't know what's about to happen, but then the dream sequence would change, and it would show me something about somebody that wasn't good for me, or it would show me some scenario. And I actually saw, I'm not going to say the word because it'll get your channel slapped, but we can't talk about because of what happened in 2020.
Right.
I saw that something like that coming, where the military had people in their houses, and you couldn't come out, and the ETs were above, and people were wearing masks and stuff like that. I was like, what the heck is that about? So I saw all these different things. Now, I don't currently get dreams like that at all. I really
It sounds prophetic.
Yeah, I just really think that these things just kind of pop in at the right time and then pop back out, and they stay away for as long as they want until there's something else that you need to see. And I've always wondered if the purpose of showing up and showing me that wasn't to tell me that that would be around the time that I would start speaking out about certain things about the way that the world are, because around that time is when I started podcasting as a guest at first, right? And then that was when Boundless Authenticity came along, and I don't know where that name came from either. I was sitting around here, all right, baby Jesus, give me a name for this thing. And then I was heard Boundless Authenticity. And I was like, who said that? And then, that was how that got started.
Well, that's beautiful, I have to say, because I guess, we all have been through so much. And our public needs to understand that, you are a super talented musician. You were supposed to be a huge rock star. And everything changed because of the circumstances, and you had your dreams and your experiences, and then you suddenly decided to do these podcasts. And what's interesting about it, I think, is the fact that you could also take other people's experiences and try to help them also through your hypnotherapy. So, would you like to share with us, how did you get into hypnotherapy, and how exactly are you trying to help the experiences by dividing somehow their screen images from what really happened? Try to go there and
Or they're
explain what you're trying to do.
or their fabricated narrative from the truth of what they really experienced.
The thing about that is that I have never worked directly with someone that came and said, I need a regression because I've had this experience. Quite frankly, what happens is people want to stop smoking, they want to lose weight, they want to get rid of anxiety, or they have some trauma. But the subconscious mind only works on a what's safe to touch basis. And you don't get to control what you look at. So you can't just say, hey, let's look at this alien abduction that I know happened in 1995. You can't do that.
Right.
And that's why I disagree with a lot of the hypnotherapy stuff that goes along with the mainstream UFO narrative out there, because they always tell a story where it's framed as though the person went to the hypnotherapist to look for it. And that isn't how it works, because that's how you invite false memories. That's how you create false creation. But anyways, to answer your question, Polly, I got into hypnotherapy because I wanted to make sure that I was the best person that I could be. And as I said, I got obsessed with meditation and consciousness and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, so psychology is lying to us about stuff. I need to find out exactly how to get into the subconscious mind fast to change my patterns of behavior. And then I decided I liked it so much that I wanted to do it for myself. But what really fueled it was I did a hypnosis session with this guy, Steve G. Jones. It was a past life regression, and I went to this planet. It had a pink sky. Everybody was humanoid beings, but I was in some position of military authority where I was walking around the village and I would watch at night, and I was commanding this army of people in this village. And I was a little bit flirty with one of the handmaidens that served the whoever was ruling. My mind didn't take me that far in the regression, but I would climb this tower, sit on the ledge, and talk to her all night while I watched what was going on. And I was so busy talking with her at the time when he took me to how I died that I didn't realize that stuff got lit on fire, and wherever I was under attack by these beings. And they were not the stereotypical reptilian imagery that people talk about. They were gray skin, translucent skin, so it wasn't scaly, but they had these long claws. And I guess I wasn't afraid of them in this dream, so I ran headfirst towards where they were at. And I was trying to get people to safety through this wooded area, away from the fires. And the instant that I turned around and said the girl's name, I was calling the girl's name, I got slashed in the face by one of these things. And then I fell into quicksand, and that's how I died in that lifetime. And I came back, and how it sealed the deal was 2 weeks later, I was on Facebook just scrolling, and I saw this girl's face. And I was like, you gotta be shitting me. This is the same girl from the past life regression. So I messaged her and I said, this is going to sound absolutely 100% bullshit crazy to you, but I had this thing called a past life regression. She's like, I heard of that. And I said, I saw you in that thing. And she was like, really? Tell me more about that. So I started telling her more about that. And she was like, okay, here's my number, call me. And we spent the whole night talking about it. And eventually she started to remember too. And she was a lot younger than I was at the time. And her boyfriend sat on the couch the whole night because we were talking and laughing.
Yeah, no doubt.
She was remembering the whole experience, right? So that was what cemented the deal. There's something to the subconscious mind. Everything about us is hidden there. I have to learn everything about it that exists. And I haven't given up on that to this day. So you're talking about 16 years later. I haven't given up on it.
You also proved to yourself that reincarnation is real.
Well, that's why you probably heard me say on podcasts that I don't believe the stereotypical reincarnation narrative either.
Right.
The idea that we all chose to come here to do stuff isn't true.
I don't believe that either.
Different circumstances by which our souls end up here. And there is some evidence to suggest that there is this reincarnation funnel but it's based on your behavior. Like if you're a shitty person, then you get soul napped. Now, I'm not the expert on that. I have to give you somebody that you can talk to who's an expert on that. But, anyways, to answer the rest of Polly's question, when I deal with people, there's a lot of people who aren't ready to hear that kind of stuff. So, as I'm looking through the compartments of their minds, I use a lot of visual imagery that is comfortable for them. So, in a house, on a couch, looking through drawers and things like that to try to find significant things. And then I make them look at it and it'll take them to a memory and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff happens to people, from being abused by their neighbor, being sex trafficked, being taken to a spaceship, you name it, where you just can't tell them that that's what's going on. Like sometimes you have to cross over loved ones, all kinds of different things happen in that space. And so indirectly you gather information about certain phenomena and you can't tell them exactly what it is that happened. And they don't ask questions either because they just want whatever it is to go away. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to be very careful about it.
Where did you learn regressive hypnotherapy?
Well, I mostly learned by doing. I could tell you all about schooling and stuff like that, but that wouldn't mean shit because what they do is they train you and then they drop you off on your ass and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing really. I'm just going to follow this script. And so eventually you realize I'm following this script, but I'm not getting the results that they told me I should get. What should I do? So I had to develop my own methods really. And I started to understand this one principle that I've coined that I've been saying a lot lately because I feel like the world is ready for it. Truth that threatens identity tends to be filtered out automatically. So anything that's true for you that has happened and it's deeply embedded in your unconscious mind, it's hardly linked to beliefs. Oftentimes it's just linked to your social belonging, whatever morals, whatever moral identity, whatever personal history you have, and whatever your status is within a group. That's relevant to the disclosure community because we see how childish people are. I mean, me and Polly have WhatsApp conversations about about how fake people are and they're insincere, they're disingenuous because the experiences that they either identify with on the internet or that they are saying that they're having don't add up, but they do point to moral identity, social belonging, those kinds of things. And that's usually a good idea of who you're dealing with. And I have a theory based on all of this that ETs tend to show themselves to people who are pure of heart, connected to source in one way or another. Their connection to a higher power is strong and genuine. Like I could tell you about Jesse Collins, my friend. He's on one of the episodes of Boundless Authenticity. And he just goes outside. He lives in Kansas. He goes outside and he just starts praying. He says, Heavenly Father, I pray for your favor. Show me this and show me that. And then all of a sudden, shit comes out of the sky. And they, there they are. Wow. And he tells these things on film. You can go to his Instagram page, Earl Bob 1960 something or the other. Hang on. It's actually at the bottom of this. How do I get this thing back on the stage? I gotta remove it from the studio and then put it back in. But yeah, so why are these phenomena making themselves known at this time is the number one question. I'm very interested in finding that out for myself.
So what have you discovered through hypnotherapy and through the people that have come to you in order to find out what happened with them? What can you tell us about your own findings and conclusions, even parallel to the alien phenomenon narrative now,
Right.
Because there are like two worlds. We have the narrative going on with the governments and the files disclosure and whatever. But in the other hand, we have the experiences stories.
What I found is
So,
that who
through your hypnotherapy, what have you discovered? What can you tell us about your findings?
so my findings are that the people who are having experiences through dreams or spontaneous ET contact, much like what you experience, Polly, or Yossi, for example, those kinds of like
You
altered
see alone, yeah.
states, those kinds of experiences appear to be genuine ET contact. And then there's other kinds which are ruining the narrative, which these are things that have been studied and have been allowed to perpetuate for so many years that we don't even know what's true from what's not true anymore. And
Right.
Right.
these are things like the Betty and Barney Hill incident. Because when you look at that from a subconscious mind perspective, then you get into the realm of cryptomnesia, which is simply what happens in the subconscious mind when you begin to remember things that are from your environment, and you think that it's your real memory. So, um, people, you have to be very, very careful because there was a hypnotherapist that actually dealt with the Betty and Barney Hill case, and he found memories where Barney had seen the image that he described on a book cover somewhere, right?
Right.
And so these are the things that blur the lines between who's really telling the truth and who's not. And if he's telling the truth, then where did that person's mind fill the gaps? This is what makes the phenomena so strange. And from what I
Right.
can tell you from my experience and from listening to people like Polly and Yossi and all these other people, that something's going on. There is a concrete alien phenomenon that exists, and there's a particular reason why they do it the way that they do, and they actually rely on things like cryptomnesia and people blurring the lines and making stuff up because it protects those who are not ready to process it.
Well, we
I
heard
have to,
lately.
I have to add this.
Yeah.
In regards to UFO sightings, like that guy in Kansas, right? I tried a procedure where you go outside and you picture yourself mentally up in the sky, looking down at where you're sitting on the ground or at a table or with a camera or whatever, right? And you try to picture yourself within a ship and try to bring down something that you can film. Now, that has worked for me twice. Once I filmed it and I put it on my channel. It's under the title The Best UFO Footage of 2023
Mm.
because the craft came straight down from below the Big Dipper where I was sitting behind a birch tree, and then it moved out, and when it came out it was a triangle with its broad edge facing forward, and then it changed into an oval, then a sphere, and then an oval, and then into a dart shape and flew over the building. In that time, it projected an infrared light beam from itself onto the top of 70-foot pine trees. My camera was the only thing to pick it up. You couldn't see the infrared with your eyes, okay? But you could see the craft visually with your eyes. We could visualize it. When it flew past the building, my friend who had a camera ran around the building and watched it kind of like a shutter go over it, right? This is one that we called down, okay? We thought the sighting was over. but he had a camera pointing the other direction. And when he reviewed that footage, the craft had swung around, come behind us, and shined an infrared light beam on where we were sitting. So it knew where we were.
Interesting.
Yeah, they always do.
And
You're right.
that was very interesting in itself because, according to what I understand, what I was doing was CE5, a step of CE5. Now, I don't believe in the CE5 protocols, but this happened.
Yeah, there's no patent on CE5, much to Stephen Greer's dismay. Any can do this. You have people like Peter Maxwell Slattery and stuff like that. But much along the same vein as Jesse Collins, there's Scott Pace over in Louisiana, and he started seeing Bigfoot just in the bushes. He would go hunting, and he would see these things show up, and then eventually the phenomenon grew and grew, and now ET crafts show up at his house, and they follow him. And his wife didn't believe him for a while, and then she saw it, and she's like, "Screw this! I'm going back inside." She ran back inside and stuff like that. I've talked to him, and he's another guy that is very religious, but he's also very pure. You talk to him, you see he's a very pure and genuine person. So there's a particular character of heart that these ETs prefer. I'm not saying they don't go to shitheads; they do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I saw what I think was a gray about an inch outside a screen. I was sitting in my living room of an apartment. Lights were on in the apartment. It was dark outside. The floor to the windowsill was about 2.5 foot up. Okay? The window was quite low. When I looked out the window, I saw a head, a big head. I didn't see the eyes. I just saw the shape of the head through the screen. And it could have only been about 3.5 foot tall. Okay. This was after a sighting that I had with 11 other people earlier that day, broad daylight, of 6 rectangular objects that had rounded edges, but living orange plasma within the confines of the object. Okay, and they were in military formation, equally separated in a straight line. And they stayed there for 25 minutes. And then they left one by one. What I'm going to say to you is, talking about good people having possibly more legitimate contact, I agree with you. I've had reoccurring dreams of people in lines holding their clothing folded in front of them, me being one of them. We're not wearing any clothes, so we're naked. And we're boarding an elevator that looks like a glass elevator that goes straight up into a huge ship. And then when we're up on the ship, we're being disseminated into different rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I have that dream all the time. I've told Sarah. I've talked to people about regressive hypnotherapy because I've woken up with many different marks on my body, bruises on my knees, pie-shaped marks on my arm. I've got a welt in the middle of my sternum that looks like a vaccination mark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still there to this day. It itches every now and then. And then when it itches, it bleeds from the puncture wounds that are 5 in a circle. And I went to a doctor about that, and he said it was a vaccination mark. And I told him I've never been vaccinated in my chest.
Yeah. that you know
So
Yeah.
weird things are happening. Okay, I've even awakened with my clothes inside out and wrong side too, which is weird after my girlfriend saw a hooded creature in our room.
Yeah.
So I'm saying things are happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I was
Um,
up in a field one time with barbed wire on my shoulder. I went to bed in my bed.
Yeah, fortunately, I've never had any experience like that. Now, this thing I got on the screen, I wanted to show everyone in case they haven't seen it. This is from Sleep Jamaica on Instagram. And this is just, they're talking about how people are reporting UAP sightings from this region. This is according to New Fork. And they got Jamaica and St. Lucia and Barbados. But interestingly, where the mouse pointer is right here is where I'm at. And so you're talking about your experience, Tim, and I also did something that was similar to CE5. And I'm standing somewhere around here, literally. And this is the parish of St. Michael in this area here. And this is the port. And so I'm looking in this general direction where I'm dragging the mouse. One night, I
Right.
take my dog outside to pee. I experience a time distortion. And it was like I'd been standing there for an hour, but it felt like only a few minutes. And the dog didn't react whatsoever. But what I saw was these crafts that were, well, not these crafts. One big craft came up out of the water and it just went across very rapidly with a light coming out of it, like it was scanning the ocean. And I was like, okay, I've seen something like this before, only once. And then it zigzagged, it went an abrupt angle like this, and then off at another angle and disappeared. And I'm like, no plane can do that. What was that? And I know I've seen something come out of that water before and then crash right into it, and there was no splash. And so I was just kind of dumbfounded. And it was another one of those things where I really just kept it to myself for a while and tried to analyze what that was. So
Yeah.
outside of just the dream context, I do know personally firsthand that there's stuff going on and they're manifesting in that way as well. And I just would love to know why me? Like, why did I need to see that? Is it just to
Right.
tell other people that I saw it? And what would be the payoff for doing so? Because I've been
Right.
telling people about this stuff for a while. I've been having open dialogues about it for a while. I talked to Kate Thorvaldsen. You probably know her with the implants, and she shows you she puts the magnet on her face and she shakes it and it won't come off. She has like 30 of those all across her body in some intimate places. And her boyfriend was involved with MUFON at some point. This was many years ago, probably 20 or 30 years ago. And they had no answers for it. She's been all through the medical route to see what it was. She's seen the things on x-rays, and there's no explanation for it. But she has these experiences of seeing
Being able to understand through hypnotherapy why some of us that have these experiences through astral traveling or dreams, and there are some other people that actually see the crafts and the aliens in their homes, for example.
My answer to that, and it may be an answer that triggers all the other hypnotherapists on the internet that like to think that they're the expert. I'll be the first to tell you I am not the expert. I am committed to learning and growing in this field to the degree that it continues to help people. And I have a hard time believing, let me say this first before I give you my answer. I have a hard time believing that hypnotherapists are just going into somebody's mind and saying, okay, we're going to look at this incident. Because unless you're dealing with a trauma where the imprint stays so fresh in that person's mind and it's there and it's ready to come up to the surface to be dealt with, I would say quite confidently that in most cases, those hypnotherapists are probably leading the client in a particular direction and their mind is filling the gaps. And not to trust that, not to trust all of the information that they get, because it's very difficult to then tell what is fact from fiction, what is actually, as ChatGPT would say, lived experience.
Yeah.
Right.
So my answer to your question, Polly, is that each person has to understand that the brain goes into alpha brainwave state for 7 hours or more throughout the day, because otherwise you would have a series of mini strokes. You have to go into that state automatically as a default in order to process trillions of bits of information every day.
Right.
We are susceptible to altered states of consciousness all the time. A person doesn't have to be a meditator. They don't have to be super religious. They can have an experience because at that point in time, their brain was open to it. They were open to receive.
Right.
That these ETs, because they enter across the veil, so to speak, and because the ability to do so is connected to the manipulation of frequency, that because the brain operates in cycles per second, which is frequency, speed,
Right.
that they can induce these experiences by manipulating frequencies because of the
Right.
levels of consciousness technology that they have access to. Right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that for people like me, where if I jokingly tell this story all the time, if I'm going to the bathroom and I'm tired and my eyes are closed and I'm scratching my belly and I'm in my underwear and my flip-flops going to the bathroom at 3:30 in the morning and an ET shows up, I'm gonna whoop his ass because I am not in the mood to do that when I gotta get up in 2 hours. Right?
Right.
Nobody's gonna abduct me that way, and nobody's going to take me down this path that I don't want to get involved in at that time. So I jokingly say that, but that's my personality. I'm a very serious person at 3 in the morning, right? And they have to get to us that way. Those of us who are very passionate and full of fire, and those who are more comfortable traveling across different timelines and dimensions when we sleep, it's easier for them because that's where they are. And as we know, everything is illusory. So when somebody has an experience like what you had, Tim, where you actually think you physically saw it, it's all
Right.
light-based because it's all across a spectrum of light. That's how we perceive reality, spectrums of light.
Right.
It's
I
like
actually filmed it.
right? And so what do cameras do? They perceive frequency, right?
Right.
Across the spectrum of light. So that's why the camera can see it and other people that were standing right next to you can't see it because
Right.
the frequency, they're not attuned to that frequency,
Right.
perceiving at that rate.
Right. We see in such a narrow band of light
Right.
frequency.
And so when a person experiences something fearful, for example, when you hear about negative ET experiences, they're also perceiving that through the same altered state of consciousness. It isn't this bullshit that you hear through the New Age about, you know, guilt and grief and sadness and joy and across the Hawkins scale of consciousness. Light just does what it does. It's all
I'm glad you touched that point because lately we've been hearing a lot in the narrative the comparison between aliens being called demons, you know.
Right.
So I
Demonic.
wanted to ask you, what's your opinion about it, especially because you go through hypnotherapy. So do you think these demons or aliens called demons come from a personal religious belief, or is there something about it?
like
Could
I
they
said,
be?
I reference Alexander Pagani, who is from the Bronx. He's a pastor. He's a deliverance minister. He recently brought out this video talking about aliens in the Bible. He shows you exactly where the scripture says that there are aliens, and he makes the distinction between aliens and what I like to call parasitic entities, which are the interdimensional entities that often Christians refer to as the Nephilim spirit, etc., etc. Now,
Right.
we
Right.
those things also historically were validated to exist when you talk about the Nephilim and giants and things like that. Were they a form, when you to get into the Anunnaki and stuff like that, were they a form of extraterrestrial life that were able to embody physical bodies? I would say yes, based on my opinion, but my opinion is just the best conclusion I've come to based on the information I have. When Christians are saying things like that, it's because they don't understand, and it's because their family member that they picked up Christianity from, or their pastor that they picked up Christianity from, were not trained in deliverance. Deliverance is the art and ability to cast out parasitic entities inhabiting a person's body and mind.
Right.
Okay, that's essentially what it is. But when you attend seminary, you're oftentimes not told about those things, and if you are told about those things, you're told that it's nonsense. Okay, so these are the kinds of people you have going into the church then, who are just reciting and regurgitating what they were told to say, and they might very well be hearing the voice of God when they're speaking to you. Don't get me wrong, I believe in God, I pray to God, but what I can say is that you're dealing with either repetitive content in a person's environment, and they've heard it so many times that everything is demons, or they feel as though their identity will be threatened and they'll be punished if they acknowledge that there's anything other than demons, because that's what they were told.
Exactly. And
And
that's my feeling too. I truly believe that that is a way from religions to keep controlling people. You know, when
Yeah.
they
Yep.
always talk about, you know, a God-fearing person. Why should we fear God? We
they
should
don't
not fear
understand
God,
what
whatever God it is.
they're
You
told.
know?
They are taught that God-fearing means that you're afraid of the fire in the sky, hell and damnation God that's going to blow up society if you do certain things. And yet here we are, more debauched than ever before, and nothing's blown up yet. But
Exactly. So,
the
you know,
term,
we don't know really the nature. We wonder about the nature of the alien species. That's true. But in the other hand, the feeling is that they are already trying to impose fear in the disclosure movement or in people, making them fear already, like this God-fearing thing, when we don't really know what's going on and why. So it feels like they are trying to control everything through fear, as always, you
well, you see,
know.
in the traditional language, God-fearing meant reverence, ultimate respect for a supreme creator of all that is. And so when it comes down to the real meaning of fear of God in terms of reverence and respect and worship and praise for an energy that animates and creates all things, even the aliens talk about it. Even in cases where people, and I said this to you before we started, where people say they've had these ET encounters, they acknowledge the presence of this greater consciousness. Okay? And 2,000 years ago, when the Bible was written and disseminated, it was used as a control mechanism because people were then, it was then framed in such a language that it propped up the authority of the time. And it was a privilege to have the Bible because if you were of a lesser circumstance, you couldn't have a copy of it. Okay? So all of these things need to be taken into consideration. Christians need to be better Christians and stop giving other people who question their programming religious trauma, because all that does is it causes people to run to the other side of the spectrum and they get involved in the new age, and then they've gone so far down the beaten path of garbage and gobbledygook that where the two things intersect, where people like Jesse Collins and Scott Pace and these people who are highly religious, who read and study the Bible, but they understand what's being said rather than what they were told to interpret it as. You know, you get what they get, and then you have all the people who are like them and us, who walk the middle path, who believe in God, who are fine with whatever happening on any given day. An anvil could drop from the sky and hit me on my head. I wouldn't give two shits about it. I guess I would just die and come back. Like that kind of like just okay with whatever happens attitude, who are receiving contact or privileged enough to work with people or experience people and talk to them about what's going on in their lives. And you realize that more people than not have had some kind of paranormal, psychic, or ET experience. And it's just beyond the surface. But you cannot force a person to remember an experience that they're not ready to remember. That's the important takeaway from this whole podcast. If you talk to
would you recommend or would you recommend hypnotherapy for people that would love to understand what happened with their lives and their own experiences or alien experiences, if we are talking about the phenomenon? And how should they search for the right hypnotherapy?
I would say there's no such thing as the right hypnotherapist. But the first question, I would encourage that person to just go buy a notebook and write about the experience. Because if there's information that is fresh and available to you, get that first. Write down your dreams, if that's how you experience it. Write down your dreams. Take note of those kinds of things, because you will train your memory banks in your subconscious mind, which is always trying to talk to you anyway. The way that we think is in images. And so it goes, hey, is it okay to keep this? But what happens is we watch television. It enters our mind as direct input. And so we have all of this information that the mind wants to find strategies to solve problems. So someone could have had an experience in a dream the night before, for example. And by the time they get up in the morning, they're blurry headed because they haven't trained their mind to remember their dreams when they wake up. And the first thing they do is they get a cup of coffee and forget all about it. Instead of taking the moment to write down what they can remember. Because that conscious recall, if it was an experience that you had and if there's meaning in it, it will repeat. The mind always just goes, hey, is it okay to keep this thing? But then if you've watched, an episode of Fringe or the X-Files or something like that, and then you go and you have a dream about aliens and you start seeing stuff that's familiar that you've watched, then you can't do anything with that. Because the mind responds to stress by filling the gaps with familiar images, and it just says, hey, can this help you figure out what's going on? Can this help you give language to what you understand? So we have to be careful with the phenomenon. And I think that the more you write down your dreams and you look at what you're going through, or if you have a traumatic experience and you think you saw some lights in the sky or whatever, write down what you think you saw. Draw what you think you saw. Because that's where the real evidence is. And that's not anything that people aren't already doing. This is stuff that, they've got files and files and files of this stuff at MUFON everywhere.
Oh, yeah, everywhere.
Definitely.
And Polly, as you were talking about organized religion, they got stuff on ETs under the Vatican that we're never going to find out about.
In fact, the Vatican came out and admitted that ETs exist like 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, they're just going to do whatever they normally do, which is just pretend to stay in place and hope nobody notices that they're not saying anything about it, and let everybody else talk so loud that they can just eventually step back and wait another 4 or 5 years. And they're never going to be the ones to tell us. We are the disclosure. We are the ones that have to come out and say, this thing is happening to me, because it's the same thing. Liken it to the phenomenon of narcissists. In 1985, you told anybody that your father was a narcissist. You didn't have the language for it. They were working on it, but they didn't say that that's what that was and that it was popular and common. And so if you said to anybody in your immediate environment, my dad does this, this, and this, what would they do? They would say, oh, he's such a sweet person. That can't be true. But now we know narcissists exist. So when we say that these things happen, people believe us, or they're more inclined to believe us.
Right.
We have to do the same thing with the ET stuff. I mean, I've had so much paranormal stuff happen to me that it's like wiping my ass. Sorry to use such vulgar language. but it's just like I just don't even remember it all, right?
Right.
And if
Sarah
you're-
has too.
yeah.
Hmm.
And if you are a person that you are constantly having these things happening, it's not for nothing. You know? Like if you think that you're if you think you're getting abducted by aliens every night at 12:30 and it's recurring, then tell someone. It's the same thing as when you have a traumatic event happen in your life. Talk to someone. Just talk to them, regular talk therapy. Have a conversation with somebody. Call a friend. Call one of us. Say, I had this experience happen. I would like to tell you about it. Because I find what pisses me off with the whole MUFON thing is that so many thousands of people have these experiences. They report it to them, and then it gets filed away, and nothing ever happens with it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. And you know what? I can't be more happy that we had this conversation because
Yes.
you actually totally confirmed what I said in the beginning of our show. Your honesty, and you're so sincere, and your understanding, with your empathy. It's so important. And I really
Just like
um,
add there,
want people to go and watch your interviews. They are all very interesting. They are not always related to the UFO phenomenon. You have shows about consciousness, and
Self-sabotage.
yeah.
Yep.
So go subscribe and like and follow and
Sarah?
just
there's one more thing I wanted to add there about this whole thing because we got problems. we got problems on this planet, and if we want things to change, we have to get comfortable about talking about them, no matter what it is. And the ET phenomenon is going to creep up on a lot of people that aren't being honest about what they are experiencing or what they're hearing other people talk about, and it's going to cause even more problems. And my point is that when I say that there is no such thing as a credible hypnotherapist, hypnotherapy is a collaborative process. You are your own best hypnotherapist. You are your
right.
therapist. It is your ability to be self aware and self assess and self regulate and keep track of what you experience that is going to set everything further apart from the mainstream narratives that continue to blur the lines. And all these other people that are saying that they regressed this person and they had this experience and that experience. That's great.
Right.
But we were not there with them. So we can't say for sure how that person conducted that session.
That's
Right.
correct.
And as I said before, things are often just beyond the surface, but what's meant to come up is what's going to come up. So you can't just go looking for aliens, right? So
Right.
the more concrete evidence that we have, the more conversations we have with strangers on the bus about, hey, I saw this funny light in the sky last night. Or, I was on Instagram and I was on Earl Bob 1964's Instagram page looking at these lights in the sky. Or UFO Girly on Instagram. You look at her stuff, she goes out with this thing, this camera every night and catches this stuff. And, a person might be more inclined to say, hey, I saw something like that. Regular, everyday, average conversations with the average person. You see somebody on a construction site, they're freaking jackhammering away, whatever. Like, you stick your phone and you say, hey, I saw this thing.
Yeah.
You're likely going to say, hey, my kid saw something like that 2 days ago or something like that. These are the conversations that will change history more so than waiting for an established person or a so-called expert. Because
Right.
these people,
Grassroots movement.
these people that want to control the narrative, they're very good at monitoring and profiling people. And they're like, okay, this person is going to say certain things And we want to make sure that we say it before them and say it in a way that when they eventually talk, it's going to discredit what they're saying or make what they're saying seem small, or it's going to be like, oh, this person over here said it first. So we have to track the everyday average person. I don't want to ramble more.
And you know what? It's not only that. I truly believe that we need to be very careful, not only with the huge narrative that it's going on around, but we need to be also very careful inside our own community. And that's why I love your podcast and our podcast too, because we're not trying to impose our beliefs on no one. We are
Yeah,
trying to give
we
our information in order for the public to decide by themselves, because we all have different experiences. We are not going through the same path. We have all the same goal of knowing, what's going on, and debunking and researching. That's what we want, but we don't
right.
want to impose our experiences and our knowledge on no one. So
I
for
have
us,
to.
it's really
I'm sorry. I have to add this. We are on a journey. All three of us here on the panel, outside of yourself. And we do not believe or subscribe to the idea of experts. There are no experts. People who claim to be experts are doing it for a narcissistic reason, an ego reason. There are no experts. We're all learning. We don't know why these things are here. We don't know their agenda. We don't know where they're from. We don't even know if they're actually real. So the point is, we're searching. We're on a mission. Polly's on a mission. She's been on a mission since I've met her. And Sarah down below is on a mission. Aren't you, Sarah?
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I would add to that is that there's some very simple rules of engagement. The light side does not force itself on you. The light side cannot take away your free will. So it can't make you have an experience that you're not ready for, or that you are not consenting of on some level, consciously or unconsciously. So that's another marker for gauging experiences, because if somebody is manipulated or tortured or hurt or whatever, that's something dark.
Right.
Yeah.
And
right.
that's where things then go into a different territory. And as I said, I'm not the expert on that, but I I know somebody that is.
Right.
On to you.
I have a friend that had a very negative experience with abduction, and she claims to be an abductee rather than an experiencer. And she gets angry when people call her an experiencer because she felt violated by the beings that took her. Very, very famous person. I can actually say who she is. Deborah Jordan Cobble. She was the real person behind the book and miniseries Intruders
Yeah.
by
Bud Hopkins.
Well, you have to understand that when a person experiences something that fractures their identity like that, it's traumatic.
Right.
It's difficult to then separate themselves from the experience. And so the word experiencer might very well be the trigger, because it was very real and very tangible. And so we have to have compassion for those who who find themselves in trouble because of it. You know, there is a dark aspect to some of these things. And as I said, the light side doesn't do that. And so if she's experiencing a severe identity issues where she has to identify as an abductee, and this is now her who she is, I am that now, then when she's ready to unpack the traumatic aspect of that, then that will be the only time that we can know for sure exactly what happened, when she's ready to
Correct.
shed.
Correct.
And the
Correct.
healing time, how much we invest in our own healing, which is not less important. Trying to understand our own traumas in order to give them the right place and a better understanding also of the alien experience, parallel talking. So the healing, in my opinion, is not less important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the magic questions in this line of work is, what is that insert, like, trying to protect you from? What is
Yeah,
this entity as an abductee trying to protect you from? It could be even further information about what really happened. But you will
yeah,
find that when you talk to experiencers, that there is that layer where it's like, as soon as you get close to whatever the information they're putting forward is trying to protect them from, they shut down, because whatever happened is linked to that. And there's a lot of research with people who have been traumatized at some point, usually early childhood, and recurring paranormal phenomena or UFO experiences as well. So we can never really tell until that person's ready. There's so much information there to be found that,
right.
that's one of the
We
reasons
are,
in
we
around.
are complicated human beings. We are beautiful. Our differences, it's what makes us beautiful. But we are very complicated too. Our feelings and emotions, it's a lot to deal, especially because our lives are not simple. So everything together sometimes feels like too much, and still we need to stay strong and heal and just try to be the best persons that we can and stay human and love and support each other.
Oh yeah.
And you're doing a great job, so I'm so
Yes.
proud of you, Jihan. Really, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, we
I,
want to we want to thank you for coming here
Oh,
tonight and
definitely.
actually going over an hour. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
As soon as I get off,
Appreciate the
I'm gonna go straight to sleep. But
appreciate the visit from your pigeon too. That was nice to meet Birdie.
yeah, I had to put Birdie away because he was getting angry with that computer mouse. But yeah, another thing I'd like to say before I leave is that, to Paulie's point, we are dealing with so much trauma on this planet that it's like I said, you find things out in a secondhand nature when you're dealing with people. And these are the people who've really had the messed up stuff happen, and they don't even remember because whatever it is that happened to them, their uncle touched them, their neighbor shipped them off to Guyana. These are all things that I've really experienced. There's something else that they've seen too, but that's not coming to the forefront because the mind is trying to deal with the thing that hurts the most. So if your experience with ETs is great, but you've got a bunch of trauma covering that, then what's the reason that your mind is going to show you that first? So you have to really just understand that we are dealing with a lot of traumatized people. There's so much hurt that people cannot get past. That even on the other side of that, you start talking to them about aliens, they're like, "Fuck aliens! I gotta pay my bills, buddy." Like,
yeah, right.
time for that,
Exactly. I
right?
know. I know.
Sarah, do you have a last comment?
Well, I just have to say that we definitely need to treat ourselves better too, and be more open to other people's experiences. Because I mean, sometimes things just sound so outrageous that we go, "Yeah, I don't want any part of that." But then at the same time, you never know. It's best to just keep an open mind, and it's and don't be afraid to share your experiences. I mean, even I, don't go around telling it to everybody, because, well, the majority of the people are like, yeah, well, like, yeah, I don't even know, right? And the people that are interested in it, they give you advice, and we can talk things out, and it's helpful, right? you know uh not everything has to be, doom and gloom. You can find positivity in anything that happens to you. Really, you just have to look for it. That'd be my biggest thing to say to everybody is don't be afraid to open your mind up to other possibilities.
Yeah,
Right.
seriously, we are living in 2020 stupid, and there's a lot of dumb people out there.
I've noticed.
Beyond that, right? Beyond that reality, there really is no such thing as no such thing. So when somebody tells you about anything that they experienced, believe them the first time. Don't take it to heart, but analyze the information and say, is there some truth in that person's experience?
Yeah.
Right.
Because
I
Always
find
research.
other people that have the same experience.
One thing I wanted to add real quick is I live in a rural community, so it's really small, like 1,500 people. Okay, I talk to a lot of farmers about UFO sightings, nuts and bolts, craft. Okay, they see them all the time because they're out in their fields, planting their corn, planting their soybeans, tilling their fields, taking care of their cattle. They see stuff all the time, and they're willing to talk about it as long as you're open to the topic and you will not put them down for what they saw. And that's what I've been doing. I've been keeping a record of the local people here who have seen things. And it's more than people realize. That common everyday people are seeing stuff on a regular basis. They're just afraid to talk about it, but they need to keep an open mind that there are people like us on this panel, people in Barbados like JEHAN and his family who are interested in listening to you. So I want to thank everybody who was on the panel tonight. I want to thank JEHAN Sattaur for being so gracious and giving up an hour and 21 minutes of his time and sharing his birdie with us. And I really appreciated your commentary. And I want to say this to you, JEHAN, you've made a new friend in me, and I'm sure with Sarah. And I would like to have you back on the channel sometime in the future, if that's possible, because we can continue our conversation about consciousness.
Yes.
I just have one thing to say about experts real quick. You see it every day in the court system, right? Experts fighting experts with the same piece of evidence, the same technique. What even is an expert, really, you know?
An expert is somebody that's been talking bullshit long enough that they believe it.
Right.
Yep, that's the truth. Yep. Okay, so thank you to everybody on the panel. Thank you to everybody who watched online. Next week, we have John Burroughs from the Rendlesham, UK, United Kingdom UFO encounter. He's coming on because he and his best friend are releasing a new book with new evidence that has come to light about what occurred on that evening. John Burroughs was one of the only people that touched the craft that landed and actually received a physical complication afterwards. And it took him 20 years to get the government, the federal government, to pay up on an insurance claim concerning his UFO encounter, and they did. So he's gonna talk about that. So I want to say good night to everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night.
Pinnacle of Earth, do not fear us. We are only here to help you ascend to a higher frequency. When you do, you will become one with our intergalactic community.
for proof that we're not alone? Welcome to UFO Man Reloaded, your one stop for all your UFO needs. Hit subscribe and join the mission.